The world had never known such silence. Streets once bustling with life now stood still as humanity held its collective breath. Towering above the cityscape was the Cyrillan flagship, a vessel of gleaming obsidian and liquid-like gold. Its presence dominated the skyline, radiating an aura that was both awe-inspiring and foreboding. This was no invasion, at least, not yet. The Cyrillans had come to talk, but their terms were clear. One representative from Earth would meet their queen to discuss the future of both civilizations. No armies. No weapons. Just words. Humanity chose a man named Riven Callan. He was not a soldier nor a politician, but a linguist and cultural mediator. His unassuming demeanor and deep understanding of communication made him the perfect candidate. But as Riven stood before the shimmering entryway to the alien ship, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The eyes of the world were on him, and the fate of Earth rested on his shoulders. The interior of the Cyrillan ship was unlike anything Riven had ever seen. The walls seemed alive, pulsing softly with veins of light that shifted hues with every step he took. A low hum filled the air, resonating in his chest like the deep echo of a heartbeat. His guide, a tall, silver-skinned Cyrillan with an elongated head and sharp, glimmering eyes, said nothing as they led him through the labyrinthine corridors. At last, they arrived at the throne chamber. The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a room bathed in a golden glow. At its center sat Queen Threxia, a vision of both beauty and power. Her form was humanoid but undeniably alien. Her skin gleamed like molten gold, and her long, iridescent hair floated as though caught in an unseen breeze. Her piercing, violet eyes regarded Riven with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "So," she began, her voice smooth yet commanding, "this is the champion your people have chosen?" Riven bowed slightly, meeting her gaze with as much confidence as he could muster. "I wouldn't call myself a champion, Your Majesty. I'm here to represent my people, to understand yours, and to find a path forward." Threxia's lips curled into a faint smirk. "A path forward? You speak as though our destinies are intertwined. Aren't they?" Riven countered. "Your arrival here suggests you believe we're worth talking to. That means there's something we can offer each other." Her smirk faded, replaced by a look of intrigue. "Bold words for someone standing in my presence. Do you not fear me?" "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't intimidated," Riven admitted. "But fear won't get us anywhere. Respect will." Threxia leaned back in her throne, her gaze never leaving his. For a moment, the room was silent, save for the faint hum of the ship. Then, she rose, her towering form casting a long shadow over Riven. "Very well," she said, descending the steps of her throne. "If respect is what you offer, then respect you shall have. But know this, human, the Cyrillans do not waste time on flattery or empty promises. You will prove your worth, or your people will not see tomorrow." Her words sent a chill down Riven's spine, but he held his ground. "Then let's not waste any time." The meeting stretched late into the night. Riven and Threxia discussed everything from their respective civilizations' histories to their philosophies on survival and progress. Riven's honesty and willingness to admit humanity's flaws caught Threxia off guard. She had expected arrogance or groveling, but instead, she found a man who spoke with conviction and sincerity. Still, her exterior remained cold. She questioned him relentlessly, challenging his every assertion. Yet, beneath her stern demeanor, a flicker of curiosity began to grow. This human was unlike any being she had ever encountered. He was intelligent, yes, but there was something more, an unyielding spirit, a refusal to back down even in the face of overwhelming odds. By the time their meeting concluded, Riven was exhausted but resolute. As he prepared to leave, Threxia stopped him. "Riven Callan," she said, her tone softer than before. "You have surprised me tonight. But surprises do not ensure survival. If you wish to continue these discussions, you will remain aboard my ship. I will decide whether your presence has value." Riven hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "I'll stay. If it means finding a way to bridge the gap between our worlds, I'll do whatever it takes." Threxia's violet eyes narrowed, and for the briefest moment, her lips twitched as though suppressing a smile. "Very well. Your courage, at least, is commendable. Let us see if your actions match your words." As Riven was led to his quarters, He couldn't shake the feeling that he had just taken the first step into a world far larger and more complex than he had ever imagined. And somewhere deep within her golden heart, Phyrexia felt an unfamiliar emotion stir, a spark she couldn't yet name. Riven awoke to the soft hum of the Cyrillan ship, his temporary quarters bathed in a faint, golden light. Despite its alien design, smooth, seamless walls that seemed to pulse with an organic rhythm, the room was strangely comforting. The bed, though not designed for human anatomy, adjusted itself to his form, cradling him like a cloud. But comfort was the last thing on Riven's mind. Today, he was to meet Queen Phyrexia again, this time under less formal circumstances. She had invited him, or perhaps commanded was the better word, to tour parts of the ship and learn more about Cyrillan culture. Riven couldn't tell if it was a gesture of goodwill or a test, but either way, he was determined to make the most of the opportunity. The halls of the Cyrillan flagship were alive, not in the metaphorical sense, but literally. The walls pulsed faintly, as though they were breathing, and the air carried a faint floral scent that shifted subtly with each passing corridor. His guide, the same silver-skinned Cyrillan from before, led him to a grand atrium. "Queen Phyrexia awaits," the guide said, their voice soft but firm. In the center of the atrium stood Phyrexia, her golden form radiant in the soft light filtering through what appeared to be crystalline skylights. Around her, Cyrillans moved with purpose, their silvery forms a stark contrast to her brilliant glow. "You're late," Phyrexia said, her tone sharp but not unkind. "I wasn't given a clock," Riven replied with a slight grin. To his surprise, the corners of her mouth twitched upward. "You humans and your humor," she muttered before gesturing for him to follow. As they walked, Phyrexia explained the intricacies of Cyrillan society. They were a proud and ancient race, advanced in ways humans could scarcely comprehend. Their technology, she explained, wasn't crafted but grown, a symbiosis of biology and engineering. The ship they stood on was alive, a sentient entity that responded to their needs. "What about your people?" Riven asked. "You mentioned last night that survival is a priority. Are you under threat?" Phyrexia hesitated, her gaze hardening. "The Cyrillan population is dwindling. Our species is long-lived, but our ability to reproduce has weakened over millennia. Fertilization among our kind is rare, and even when it occurs, the resulting offspring are often weak or stillborn." Her voice, though steady, carried an undercurrent of sorrow. Riven felt a pang of sympathy but chose his words carefully. "That sounds devastating. Is there no solution? No way to reverse the decline?" Phyrexia stopped walking and turned to face him. "We have tried everything. Genetic manipulation, environmental adaptations, even bonding with other species. None have yielded lasting results. Our kind is facing extinction, and with it, all the knowledge and history we have gathered over eons." Her violet eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, Riven saw not a queen but a woman burdened by the weight of her people's survival. "Why tell me this?" he asked gently. "Because you must understand the stakes," she replied. "Your kind sees us as invaders or conquerors, but we are neither. We are survivors, clinging to existence. You may think us advanced, but we are as vulnerable as you." Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. The tour continued, and Riven found himself in awe of the Cyrillan way of life. Their cities, housed within massive biodomes on their home planet, were marvels of ecological harmony. Every element, from the air they breathed to the food they consumed, was carefully balanced to sustain their fragile population. As they passed through a chamber filled with glowing orbs suspended in liquid, Phyrexia explained, "These are our stasis cradles. They hold the unborn, the few embryos we have managed to create. They remain in suspended animation until we can ensure their survival." Riven approached one of the orbs, peering into its translucent surface. Inside, he saw a tiny shimmering form, delicate and beautiful. The sight filled him with a mixture of wonder and sadness. "How many survive?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Less than 1 in 100, Phyrexia admitted. "Each loss is a blow to our people's hope." Riven turned to her, his expression earnest. "I'm sorry. I can't imagine what that must feel like." For the first time, Phyrexia's mask of stoicism cracked. She looked away, her golden hair shimmering like a cascade of sunlight. "It is the burden of leadership to bear the sorrow of an entire race. But I do not need your pity, human. I need solutions." Later that evening, they shared a quiet moment in the observation chamber, a vast space with a transparent ceiling that offered a stunning view of the stars. Riven couldn't help but feel small beneath the endless expanse, but he found comfort in its beauty. "You speak with conviction," Threxia said, breaking the silence. "And yet, you are but one man. What makes you believe you can make a difference?" Riven thought for a moment before replying. "Because sometimes, one person is all it takes. One spark to ignite change, one voice to inspire others. I'm not here to save your people, Threxia, but maybe I can help you see a path you haven't considered." Her violet eyes studied him intently, as though searching for hidden truths. "You are either incredibly naive or impossibly brave, Riven Callan." "Maybe a bit of both," he replied with a small smile. For a moment, they simply sat in silence, the stars above them casting a soft glow. Despite their vast differences, an unspoken understanding began to form between them. Threxia, ever the queen, would never admit it aloud, but she found herself intrigued by this human in ways she couldn't explain. And Riven, though he barely understood the weight of the path he had chosen, felt a growing determination to prove that humanity could be more than the Cyrillans had expected. Unbeknownst to either of them, their journey was only just beginning. The days aboard the Cyrillan flagship stretched into weeks. Each day, Riven found himself drawn deeper into their world. He spent hours studying their culture, history, and technology, often with Threxia herself as his guide. Despite her sharp tongue and imposing demeanor, he began to see the woman beneath the crown, a leader driven by duty, yet burdened by loneliness. For her part, Threxia couldn't deny her growing curiosity about the human. His willingness to immerse himself in her people's struggles, combined with his disarming honesty, set him apart from the countless diplomats and envoys she had encountered over her long reign. One evening, as the ship drifted in the quiet of space, Riven found himself summoned to Threxia's private quarters. The room was both regal and serene, its walls shimmering like liquid gold and the air fragrant with a soft, floral scent. Threxia stood near a curved window, gazing out at the stars. "You summoned me, Your Majesty?" Riven asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. She turned, her violet eyes meeting his. "Yes. There is a matter we must discuss, one that concerns the future of both our people." Riven stepped closer, sensing the weight of her words. "I'm listening." Threxia motioned for him to sit at a low table, its surface aglow with faint, pulsing light. She joined him, her usual air of authority softened by an almost hesitant demeanor. "Our discussions have been fruitful," she began, "but they have also revealed a truth I did not anticipate. Your kind possesses a resonance with ours, one that I believe could hold the key to our survival." Riven frowned, unsure of what she meant. "A resonance?" Threxia hesitated, then placed a hand over her heart. "The Cyrillan body is attuned to the energy of life itself. We thrive on balance, on harmony. For centuries, we have struggled to replicate this balance within ourselves, and our attempts to bond with other species have always failed. And you think humans might be different?" Her gaze intensified. "You are different. Your presence aboard this ship has already begun to affect our systems. The ship recognizes you, responds to you in ways it should not. Even I," she trailed off, her voice faltering for the first time. Riven leaned forward, his concern evident. "Threxia, what's wrong?" She exhaled softly, her regal composure slipping. "I have felt a shift within myself, a connection I cannot explain. It is as though your very essence resonates with mine, bridging a gap I believed unbridgeable." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Riven's mind raced, grappling with the implications. "Are you saying—" "I am saying," Threxia interrupted, her voice firm yet tinged with vulnerability, "that something unprecedented has occurred. A bond has formed between us, one that defies logic and science. And it has resulted in an outcome I did not foresee." Riven's breath caught. "What kind of outcome?" Threxia stood, her golden form towering over him. "I am with child, Riven Callan. A child that carries the essence of both Cyrillan and human." The revelation hit Riven like a tidal wave. For a moment, he could only stare, his mind reeling. "That's impossible," he stammered. "And yet it is true," Threxia said, her tone sharp but not unkind. "Our biology should make such a union inconceivable, yet here we stand." Riven rose to his feet, running a hand through his hair. How can this even happen? We've never... Physical intimacy is not required, Threxia interjected, her cheeks flushing faintly, a rare display of vulnerability. Our connection transcends the physical. It is an exchange of energy, of essence. Your presence, your spirit, has intertwined with mine in a way that defies understanding. Riven took a deep breath, trying to process the enormity of what she was saying. And you're sure? Threxia nodded. Our medical systems have confirmed it. The child is healthy, strong, and unlike anything our species has ever known. Her voice wavered, and for the first time, Riven saw the fear behind her composed exterior. Do you understand what this means, Riven? Your kind has achieved in weeks what we have failed to accomplish in centuries. This child could be the salvation of my people, or the harbinger of chaos. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Word of Threxia's pregnancy spread quickly through the Cyrillan fleet, sparking a mixture of awe, disbelief, and outrage. Some hailed the event as a miracle, a turning point in their species' struggle for survival. Others viewed it as an abomination, a betrayal of their purity. Riven found himself thrust into the center of the storm. Despite his initial shock, he stood by Threxia, offering her support as she navigated the political fallout. He knew his presence was polarizing, but he refused to back down. One evening, as they sat together in the observation chamber, Threxia spoke softly. You could leave, you know. Return to your world and escape this madness. No one would blame you. Riven shook his head. I'm not going anywhere, Threxia. This isn't just about me or you. It's about what we can build together, a future where our peoples can coexist. Her gaze softened, and for a moment, the weight of her crown seemed to lift. You are a strange man, Riven Callan. But perhaps, that is exactly what we need. As the stars shimmered above them, a fragile but undeniable bond began to form, a bond that would be tested in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The days aboard the Cyrillan flagship grew tense. The revelation of Threxia's pregnancy had rippled through the Cyrillan fleet like a shockwave. What had once been a united front of hope and determination now splintered into factions, each with its own perspective on the Queen's unprecedented condition. The Loyalists hailed the pregnancy as a miracle, a divine sign that the Cyrillans and humans were destined to unite. They revered Riven, calling him the Catalyst and praising his role in their Queen's newfound hope. The Purists, however, were vocal in their disdain. They viewed the unborn child as an aberration, a threat to the purity of their race. Whispers of rebellion began to circulate, and the ship's corridors, once filled with purpose, now thrummed with unease. Threxia bore the brunt of the unrest. The Queen, who had always ruled with an iron will, now found herself at the center of a storm she could not control. Meetings with her council turned into battles of rhetoric, with her advisors questioning her judgment and her priorities. You risk everything we have worked for, one advisor hissed during a heated debate. This hybrid child could destroy the fabric of our civilization, and doing nothing would doom us to extinction. Threxia snapped, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. I will not let fear dictate our future. Riven watched Threxia's struggles from the sidelines, his heart heavy. He wanted to help her, but he also knew that his presence was a double-edged sword. To the Loyalists, he was a symbol of hope. To the Purists, he was the enemy. One evening, unable to bear the tension any longer, he sought her out in the quiet sanctuary of her quarters. She was seated by the curved window, her golden hair cascading over her shoulders like molten light. The weight of her crown seemed almost unbearable. Threxia, Riven said gently, approaching her. She didn't turn, her gaze fixed on the stars. Do you know what it means to rule, Riven Callan? He hesitated. I can't say that I do. It means sacrifice, she continued, her voice low. It means carrying the hopes and fears of an entire people, even when they conflict with your own. Riven sat beside her, his expression soft. You're not alone in this. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. She turned to him then, her violet eyes shimmering with an emotion she rarely showed. You speak as though you belong here. As though you are one of us. Maybe I don't belong, Riven admitted. But that doesn't mean I won't stand by you. For a moment, the walls between them seemed to dissolve. Threxia reached out, her hand brushing against his. The touch was brief but electric, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they shared. The following day, Threxia summoned the Cyrillan Council to a grand assembly, a move that sent ripples through the fleet. Representatives from every faction gathered in the vast chamber, their faces a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. Riven stood at Threxia's side, his presence as controversial as ever. Whispers filled the room, but they fell silent as the queen raised her hand. "My people," she began, her voice resonant and commanding. "For centuries, we have fought to preserve our race. We have faced countless trials, and yet we have endured. But now, we stand at a crossroads. The child I carry is a testament to our resilience and our willingness to adapt. It is not a threat, it is a chance for survival." A murmur ran through the crowd, but Threxia pressed on. "I understand your fears. Change is never easy, and the unknown is often frightening. But we cannot allow fear to dictate our actions. We must be brave enough to embrace this opportunity." One of the purest leaders stepped forward, his expression grim. "And what if this opportunity brings ruin instead of salvation? What if this hybrid child undermines everything we are?" Riven, unable to remain silent, stepped forward. "Your queen isn't asking you to abandon who you are. She's asking you to evolve, to see the bigger picture. This child isn't just Cyrillan or human, it's a bridge between our worlds. And bridges don't destroy, they connect." The chamber fell into a tense silence, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Despite the assembly, the divisions within the fleet deepened. That night, a group of purists attempted to sabotage the stasis cradles, targeting the fragile embryos within. The act was thwarted by loyalist guards, but the incident sent shockwaves through the Cyrillan community. Threxia convened an emergency council meeting, her fury palpable. "This treachery will not be tolerated," she declared. "Anyone who seeks to harm our future will face the full weight of the Crown's judgment." Riven, who had been monitoring the situation, stepped forward. "Punishing them will only deepen the divide. We need to find a way to bring everyone together." "And how do you propose we do that?" Threxia asked, her voice tinged with frustration. Riven hesitated, then spoke with quiet conviction. "By showing them that this child represents hope, not division. They need to see that this isn't the end of your people. It's a new beginning." Threxia regarded him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You speak with the conviction of a fool," she said, though there was no malice in her tone. "But perhaps a fool is what we need right now." In the days that followed, Threxia and Riven worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between the factions. They held open forums, invited dialogue, and encouraged Cyrillans to share their fears and hopes. Slowly, the tensions began to ease. But just as progress seemed within reach, disaster struck. A rogue faction of purists, unwilling to accept Threxia's vision, launched an attack on the Queen's chambers. The attempt was thwarted, but the aftermath left the fleet shaken. As Riven tended to a minor injury on Threxia's arm, he couldn't hide his frustration. "This isn't sustainable. You're risking everything to protect a future they might not even want." Threxia's gaze softened. "Leadership is not about guarantees, Riven. It's about making choices that you believe are right, even when the odds are against you." He sighed, his hand lingering on hers. "You're too strong for your own good, you know that?" A faint smile touched her lips. "And you're too stubborn for yours." For a moment, the chaos of the world faded away, leaving only the two of them. And in that fleeting stillness, Riven realized that their bond was no longer just a partnership born of necessity, it was something far deeper. The rogue purist attack marked a turning point. The Cyrillan flagship, once a bastion of harmony, now bore the scars of internal strife. Threxia's chambers were fortified, her movements shadowed by loyal guards. Yet despite the heightened security, the Queen remained resolute. "I will not cower in fear," she declared one morning as she addressed her council. "If we yield to the shadows of doubt, we lose more than our unity, we lose our purpose." Riven stood nearby, admiring her courage. But he also saw the weariness beneath her regal facade. Leading a divided people while carrying the first hybrid child of two species was a burden no one should bear alone. The tensions within the fleet reached a boiling point one fateful evening. As Riven walked the corridors of the ship, he noticed hushed voices in a side chamber. Pausing, he listened closely. "We cannot allow this child to be born," one voice hissed. It is an affront to our purity, another agreed. If we act now, we can. Before they could finish, Riven stepped into the chamber. If you act now, you'll only prove how small-minded you really are. The group of purists turned, their silver eyes narrowing. You dare lecture us, human? You don't belong here. Maybe not, Riven replied, standing his ground. But I'm here because your queen believes in a future where both our peoples can thrive. She's risking everything for that dream, and all you can think about is tearing it down. One of the purists stepped forward, his expression cold. You think you can save us? You're nothing but an outsider meddling in matters you don't understand. I don't have to understand everything, Riven shot back. I just know that this child represents hope. And hope is worth fighting for. The tension was thick, but before the confrontation could escalate, loyalist guards arrived, dispersing the purists. Riven's heart pounded as he made his way back to Threxia's quarters, his mind racing. When he arrived, Threxia was waiting for him, her expression a mix of relief and anger. You're reckless, Riven, she said, crossing her arms. They were plotting against you, he explained. I couldn't just stand by. She sighed, her shoulders relaxing. Your courage is admirable, but you must be more careful. The purists are growing desperate. They will not hesitate to eliminate you if they see you as a threat. Riven stepped closer, his voice steady. I'm not afraid of them, Threxia. I'm afraid of losing you. Her violet eyes widened, and for a moment, the air between them was charged with an unspoken tension. You should not speak so freely, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Why not, he asked, his gaze locked on hers. You've taught me to value honesty, to fight for what I believe in. And I believe in you, Threxia. The queen looked away, her golden hair shimmering in the soft light. You are a strange man, Riven Callan. But you have a way of seeing past the crown, past the walls I've built around myself. He took her hand gently, his touch warm against her cool skin. You don't have to face this alone. Let me be there for you, not as a human or an outsider, but as someone who cares. For a moment, Threxia seemed on the verge of responding, but the sound of an alarm shattered the fragile intimacy. The attack came swiftly and without warning. A faction of purists had sabotaged the ship's central systems, causing chaos throughout the fleet. Lights flickered, and the ship's organic walls trembled as if in pain. Threxia and Riven rushed to the command center, where loyalist officers scrambled to stabilize the situation. Report, the queen demanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Purist saboteurs infiltrated the core, one officer explained. They've disabled the life support systems in several sectors and are threatening to destroy the stasis cradles. Threxia's eyes blazed with fury. They will not harm those cradles. Assemble a strike team immediately. Riven stepped forward. I'm coming with you. No, Threxia said firmly. It's too dangerous. I'm not staying behind while you put yourself in harm's way, he argued. Her gaze softened, but her resolve remained firm. Then stay close to me. I will not lose you, Riven. The battle within the ship was fierce. Loyalist forces clashed with the purists in a desperate bid to protect the stasis cradles. Riven fought alongside Threxia, his determination outweighing his lack of combat experience. In the heart of the stasis chamber, they found the purist leader, a silver-skinned figure radiating cold defiance. You cannot save your people by tainting our legacy, the leader spat. This is not taint, Threxia replied, her voice steady. This is evolution. And you are blind to its potential. As the confrontation escalated, Riven spotted a device the purists had placed near the cradles, a bomb, its timer counting down. Without hesitation, he lunged toward it, his heart racing. Riven, no! Threxia cried, but it was too late. Using what little he had learned about Cyrillan technology, Riven worked frantically to disable the bomb. Time seemed to slow as he deciphered the alien mechanism, his fingers trembling. Finally, with seconds to spare, he deactivated the device. The room fell silent, save for the hum of the cradles. Threxia approached him, her expression a mixture of relief and anger. You reckless fool, she said, pulling him into an embrace. You could have been killed. But I wasn't, he replied, his voice soft. And neither were they. In the aftermath of the battle, the purist faction was subdued, their leader taken into custody. The Loyalists, emboldened by their victory, rallied around Threxia and Riven, their faith in the Queen stronger than ever. That evening, as they stood together in the observation chamber, Threxia turned to Riven. "You risked your life for my people today. For me." He smiled, his eyes warm. "I'd do it again in a heartbeat." Her expression softened, and for the first time, she allowed herself to truly see him, not as an outsider, but as someone who had become indispensable to her. "Riven," she said quietly, her voice trembling ever so slightly, "Thank you." As the stars glimmered around them, the fragile bond they shared grew stronger, a flame of hope against the darkness of the unknown. The tension aboard the Cyrillan flagship eased in the days following the Purists' defeat. For the first time in months, a fragile peace began to settle over the fleet. The factions, though still divided in ideology, saw the undeniable strength of Threxia's leadership and the courage of the human who had risked his life to protect their future. Yet, beneath this calm, Riven and Threxia both knew that their journey was far from over. The child she carried was more than a symbol. It was a living testament to the merging of two species. Its existence challenged traditions, beliefs, and fears. Threxia's pregnancy progressed faster than expected, a result of the hybrid nature of the child. Her health, though monitored closely by Cyrillan medics, became a concern. Riven often found himself by her side, his presence a constant source of comfort. One evening, as they sat in her private quarters, the golden glow of the Cyrillan sky visible through the window, Threxia broke the silence. "Do you think I made the right choice?" she asked, her voice uncharacteristically soft. Riven turned to her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Bringing you here, allowing this to happen," she said, her hand resting gently on her swelling abdomen. "I've put my people at risk, defied centuries of tradition. And now, I carry a child who represents everything they fear." Riven reached out, covering her hand with his own. "You didn't just make a choice, Threxia. You gave your people a chance to grow, to survive. That's what leaders do. They see beyond the fear and fight for what's right." Her eyes glistened as she looked at him. "You've changed me, Riven Callan. I thought strength meant standing alone, but you've shown me that true strength comes from trusting others. And you've shown me what it means to truly care about something bigger than myself," he replied, his voice steady. The moment stretched between them, and without thinking, Riven leaned closer. Threxia didn't pull away. Their lips met in a kiss that was both tender and fierce, a culmination of all the unspoken feelings they had shared. The peace was shattered the following day when a warning alarm echoed through the ship. An unidentified vessel had entered Cyrillan space. The Purists, though weakened, had sent a distress signal to an extremist faction of their kind, one that believed in wiping out any threats to Cyrillan purity. The vessel loomed large, bristling with weapons. Its commander sent a single message: surrender the Queen and the hybrid child, or face annihilation. The threat was clear. Threxia, unwilling to risk her people's lives, prepared to negotiate. But Riven stopped her. "You can't," he said, his voice firm. "If I don't, they'll destroy the fleet," she replied, her eyes filled with determination. "Then let me go with you," Riven said. Her heart clenched. "No. I will not risk your life again. And I won't let you face this alone," he countered. After a long moment, she relented. Together, they boarded a shuttle to meet the enemy vessel. The extremist commander, a cold and imposing figure, sneered as they entered the chamber. "You've brought the human. How predictable." Threxia stood tall. "This child represents the future of our people. I will not hand it over to satisfy your outdated beliefs." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Then you leave me no choice." Before he could give the order to attack, Riven stepped forward. "Wait." All eyes turned to him. "You talk about purity, about protecting your people. But what's the point of survival if it means sacrificing everything that makes you strong? Your queen carries hope, a chance for your species to thrive in ways you can't even imagine. Don't let fear blind you to that." For a moment, the room was silent. Then, the commander laughed coldly. "You think words can sway me?" "No," Riven admitted. "But actions can." With that, he activated a hidden beacon he had brought with him, a signal to the Cyrillan fleet, which had been preparing a counterattack. The flagship and its allies surged into position, their weapons trained on the extremist vessel. Threxia smiled faintly. You underestimated us. My people stand united, even in the face of division. Realizing he was outmatched, the commander hesitated. This isn't over, he spat, before retreating. The fleet erupted in cheers as the extremist vessel fled. Phyrexia and Riven returned to the flagship, their bond stronger than ever. In the weeks that followed, the Queen gave birth to a healthy child, a girl with shimmering violet eyes and a soft golden glow to her skin. She was the perfect blend of Cyrillan and human, her presence a symbol of hope for both species. Phyrexia held the child close as she addressed her people. This is not the end of who we are. It is the beginning of what we can become. The fleet roared in approval, the divisions of the past fading as they embraced a future united by love and courage. Riven stood beside her, his heart swelling with pride. In that moment, he realized that he had found not just a purpose, but a family, a place where he truly belonged. And as the stars stretched endlessly before them, the Queen and her humans stood together, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The end.